The Second Age of Man is a savage time of sorcery and bloodshed, where strong men and beautiful women battle with warlords, priests, magicians, and gladiators to carve a bloody path to the throne of Lemuria. Barbarians of Lemuria is a pulp fantasy RPG from Beyond Belief Games, written by Simon Washburn and based on the 1960s fantasy novel series by Lynn Carter. Coming up next, I peel open the covers and see what's under the hood of this fascinating role-playing game, right now on RPG Retro Reviews. Hello everyone, I'm Captain Courageous and I review old school modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis. This week I'm taking a look at the 2017 release of Barbarians of Lemuria. While not exactly an old school game, it certainly is old school with the handling of the pulp fantasy genre, and it introduces some very unique and simple mechanics that make this game appealing to both new and veteran role players and fans of pulp fantasy in general. On a side note, I'm very glad to be back to the channel making videos. It's been a rough couple of weeks and my voice is still not 100%, but I'm going to try to get through this with as little editing as possible, so let's go ahead and get started. The game's influences are listed right on the cover page, and of course, anyone who followed this channel for any length of time knows that I am partial to every one of these classic authors. Of course, for this game, the one that is of primary interest is Lynn Carter and his barbarian Thongor. Now, I'm going to have to make a confession here. Until I started to review this game, I had never heard of this series, though the name Lynn Carter was familiar to me, as I remember reading several Conan the Barbarian adaptations by L. Sprague de Camp, and Lynn Carter's name came up on several of those. As it turns out, Carter was an avid fan of Robert E. Howard and his barbarian Thongor, and the land he adventures in, Lemuria, is a homage and a pastiche to both Conan and Hyboria. Bibliography of Carter's Lemuria's works include Thongor of Lemuria, Thongor and the Dragon City, Thongor in the City of Magicians, and Thongor at the End of Time. Marvel Comics even had a Thongor series. However, it seems that Carter lost interest in writing Thongor stories once he was contacted by L. Sprague de Camp to assist in his Conan adaptations for Bantam Books. Of course, since I've never read a Thongor story before, I went ahead and grabbed a Kindle version of Thongor and the Wizard of Lemuria, which is a revised version of Carter's first novel. I found the style to be very indicative of Howard, and honestly, you could totally replace Thongor with Conan, and you certainly wouldn't be too far off. If you're looking to adapt a work of pulp fantasy in the Conan style, then certainly this fits the bill quite well. Like Hyperborea, Thongor's setting of Lemuria is a prehistory. Its setting was suggested in 1864 by zoologist Philip Schlatter, who theorized that a vast land had sunk beneath the Indian Ocean and later appropriated by occultists and fantasy accounts of human origins. Of course, once the discovery of plate tectonics and continental drift became widely accepted, such theories were quickly discredited. Carter's Lemuria is a prehistoric kingdom located in the Pacific Ocean during the Ice Age, where Mesozoic wildlife persisted long after the cataclysm that wiped them out. There, an intelligent reptilian humanoid race, descended from dinosaurs, reigned supreme. However, the coming of the human race spells doom for these dragon kings. In the Barbarians of Lemuria RPG, Lemuria is supposedly a post-apocalyptic setting set thousands of years in the future, similar to the Thundar the Barbarian cartoon from the 1980s. So with all of that backstory out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the game itself. In order to stick with the fast and furious nature of combat in the setting, Barbarians of Lemuria uses a very simple 2d6 mechanic. Roll 2d6, add the appropriate modifiers, and if the roll is 9 or more, the task succeeds. And that's basically it. Character creation is a point-buy system, and once I read it, I had to laugh, as back in the 1980s, I tried my hand at designing a similar game system, And my inspiration was a Formula One racing board game from Avalon Hill called Speed Circuit. In that game, before play begins, each player designs their own car. Here's the chart from that game, and as you can see, there are 5 categories: start speed, acceleration, deceleration, top speed, and wear. Each category has 3 specifications, costing either 0, 1, or 2 points to add to your car. A player gets 5 points to design their vehicle. I thought it would be cool if you replaced the vehicle specifications with character attributes. Of course, my thoughts never got much farther than this. Barbarians of Lemuria does essentially this. There are 4 attributes: strength, agility, mind, and appeal. Strength is the character's physical raw power. Agility represents a character's speed and dexterity. Mind is the character's will, intellect, knowledge, and perception. And appeal represents a character's looks, charm, pervasiveness, and overall likability. A look at this value chart probably makes clear my Speed Circuit comparison. A character's basic attribute starts at 0, and the character has 4 points to distribute amongst the scores. These will essentially be the adds to the 2d6 roll when the character is attempting a task. No ability score can be given more than 3 points to start off. Further, if the GM allows it, the player can essentially sell back 1 point of an attribute, making it -1, giving them a +1 to apply elsewhere. The max attribute bonus achievable through experience is 5. Thus, the game's core mechanics keep the numbers low and reserves the possibility of failure regardless of how mighty or experienced the character gets. There are also 4 combat abilities: initiative, melee, ranged, and defense. Initiative represents the character's attentiveness and preparedness, and the fundamental awareness of the character's surroundings. Melee is the ability to fight with handheld weapons. Ranged is hitting targets with bows, crossbows, and thrown weapons, such as spears and knives. And finally, defense is the character's ability to dodge, duck, or sidestep out of the way of your opponent's attacks. Like before, the player has 4 points to distribute to these scores as well. Like before, they too can be bought down to -1 to distribute elsewhere amongst other combat abilities. After allocating points for attributes and combat abilities, the character picks their traits. These are the character's boons and flaws. You get 1 boon for free, but you can take more if you take a flaw or spend hero points, which I'll talk about in a moment. And here we are introduced to the concept of the bonus and penalty die. A boon usually, but not always, allows a character a bonus die when rolling to perform a task. So instead of just rolling 2 dice, you'll roll 3 dice and eliminate the lowest, thus improving the chance of success. Penalty dice work the same way, but you'll remove the highest die instead. There are several pages of boons and flaws, giving players a healthy choice to help customize their character, and here are a few examples. With the attractive boon, you get to roll a bonus die in situations where such a thing would be helpful, say attempting to seduce an NPC. Note the boon Battle Harness, which had me cracking up when I read it. Rather than giving you a bonus die, with this boon your character can wear the eponymous chainmail bikini or loincloth and essentially have the protection of medium armor with no armor penalties, thus enforcing the conceits of the genre and the themes of the game. So let's take a look at a couple of the flaws. Note that with the flaw Arrogant, which gives you a penalty die when dealing with provincials or foreigners, your haughty attitude and arrogance annoys them. This is a good flaw for a noble to take. With the Braggart flaw, you have a very high opinion of yourself and feel the need to share it with the world. You take credit for things you didn't do or exaggerate your accomplishments to make them seem greater than they were, and so on. You play fast and loose with the truth, and this can cause people to challenge your credibility. Lifeblood represents about how much punishment and wounding you can absorb before you die. The base value is 10 plus your strength attribute. If you suffer a wound, the damage is absorbed from this total. If your lifeblood falls to 0, you fall down stunned. Here you have 2 options. You can choose to fall unconscious, and then at the end of the fight you recover half your lifeblood and can return to battle readiness. Or you can spend a hero point, which I'll talk about in a minute, and recover half your hit points and keep on fighting. If you are below 0, you are unconscious and dying, losing 1 point around until you get medical attention, spend a hero point, or die. a character at -5 lifeblood has died. Once again, a hero point can save you. Non-player characters usually only have 1, 2, 3 lifeblood and are killed or rendered unconscious. Player's choice when at 0 lifeblood or less. Of course, further lifeblood recovery occurs through normal rest at the rate of 1 point per day. This can be accelerated further by various character careers through the brewing of potions or the administration of the medical skill. In general, lifeblood is a fixed attribute and doesn't improve. However, it is possible to improve a character's strength with advancement points, but the maximum strength for a character is 5, thus the maximum lifeblood in the game would be 15. Note, however, that a character can use hero points to reduce or even eliminate damage and even avoid death. Most characters start the game off with 5 hero points. Of course, you can take the boon marked by the gods and start the game with 6 hero points. You can choose additional boons to start off with and start with as little as 3 hero points. Hero points represent your character's luck and ability to do things beyond the norm. There are quite a few things you can do with hero points, some of which I've already discussed. Where your character was born plays a big role on your character's creation and development. The first boon you'll take will be your regional trait, and the game lists Lemuria's regions and associated traits. You can take up to 2 additional boons to start off, but those are paid for by either taking a flaw or reducing your starting hero points by 1. There are about 6 pages of Lemuria regions provided, and a description of the people can be found there. The types of boons and flaws common among those people, and examples of male and female names. For example, in the Shambhala region, you'll find dark-skinned and dark-haired people. Their eyes are purple, mauve, scarlet, and indigo. They are perceptive and make good hunters. Common boons are alert, beast friend, born athletic, etc. And flaws are distrust of sorcery, feels the cold, and illiterate. And some names. Male names are Akri, Bedran, Diallo, or Talib. Female names include Afi, Deo, Shani, or Zena. Once you've decided what region you are from and picked your first boon, then it's time to pick a career path. The game is pretty comprehensive here, and there are 26 heroic careers. Careers are not character classes per se, but a general character type of suggested abilities and skills, and you will choose more than one. As you tell the story of your character, you weave a path that explains their progression through the world. Like with common attributes and combat abilities, you get 4 points to distribute among 4 career paths, with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 3 to start out. There are your typical types you might see, such as Assassin and Beastmasters, but also unusual types that also fit the genre, such as Beggar or Executioner. But there are also some rather risque types, such as the Temptress. Career paths don't have fixed abilities or attributes, but lists of suggestions on how to create that character type using the game system. For example, the Sailor career path explains that strength and agility are important attributes for a sailor, though they are no minimums to becoming one. There is an explanation on what the adventuring life of a sailor might entail. It suggested that sailors could receive a combat bonus for actions at sea or fighting sea monsters, but any action that reasonably be construed as a skill from being a sailor gains the career path bonus. Thus, there are no skills in the game per se, but anytime a character does something related to their career path, their bonus applies, or it's just considered that the character is capable in doing that thing. For example, in the case of a sailor, a character could be considered proficient in tying knots. There are a list of boons and flaws that a sailor can take, and the lists are comprehensive enough that it is likely that no 2 sailors will be exactly alike. This makes each character distinctive and unique. Thus, a full career path might look something like this. Fingor is a barbarian from the Valgard region. Like many from the region, Fingor is tall, fair-skinned, with flaming red hair and beard. His father was a blacksmith, so Fingor has some knowledge in that career. After the destruction of his tribe by an evil sorcerer, the barbarian took up his father's sword, wandered the landscape of Lemuria, and for a time was a pirate and later a thief. Fingor's player distributes 2 points in Barbarian, 0 points in Blacksmith, and 1 point in each career path of Pirate and Thief. Thus, Fingor's attributes are a strength of 2, an agility and mind of 1, and appeal of 0. He is from the Valgard region, and for his free boon, he takes trademark weapon, his father's sword, which gives him a bonus die whenever he uses it. He also gets the flaw Distrust of Sorcery, which gives him a penalty die when dealing with alchemists and wizards. For his bonus boon, for taking the flaw, he takes Tundra Born, which gives him a bonus die when attempting to track, hunt, or trap game in snowy terrain. In order to get a third boon, Fingor takes the flaw Hot-Headed, which gives him a penalty die when trying to suppress his anger and makes him likely to fly off the handle. This goes well with his flaming red hair. And for his bonus boon, he takes Alert, which gives Fingor a bonus die when making priority rolls. Priority rolls determine the order of combat rounds, which I'll go over in just a moment. Fingor begins the game with 5 hero points and 12 lifeblood points due to his 2 strength. Thus, his character sheet so far would look like this. Finally, a character needs to equip themselves for adventure. For this aspect of the game, the rules simply say that a character starts with the things the character needs, and this should be based on the character's career path. Thus, a character who is a sailor would probably start the game with medium or heavy armor, a weapon of the character's choosing, a shield, and some basic equipment. There are no encumbrance rules. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, then, as the rules specify, play a different game. Of course, the Game Master has final say on such matters, but the basic rule is to give the players what they want. If they want something that might be appropriate to their careers, then let them have it anyway. As GM, you can always take it away through some in-game misfortune. Weapons and armor are likewise generic as far as game statistics go. A sword is, well, a sword. It doesn't matter if it's a cutlass or a rapier, a longsword or a bastard sword. Statistically, they all do the same amount of damage and fundamentally all work the same way. This is all about aesthetics. Weapons themselves are all broken down into 3 categories: light, medium, and heavy. Medium weapons all do a d6 of damage. Damage from a light weapon is determined by rolling a penalty die with the damage, and thus taking the lower roll. Damage with a heavy weapon is determined by rolling a bonus die with the damage and taking the higher roll. Armor works in a similar manner, divided into 3 categories: light, medium, and heavy. Armor reduces the amount of damage taken from a blow. The game has 2 ways of resolving this as shown on the chart here: rolling a die and deducting 3 points from the roll for light armor, 2 points from the roll for medium armor, and 1 point from the die for heavy armor. If you prefer to reduce the number of die rolls, you can use a fixed value: 3 for heavy armor, 2 for medium armor, and 1 for light armor. Armor also affects agility as shown on the chart. Helmets help with damage reduction as well, but due to reduced visibility, provides an initiative penalty. Note that wearing armor and helmets in social situations has a negative effect on such things, like walking around at the former ball in heavy armor will probably not be received well. Note also that spellcasters can wear armor if they choose, but there is a cost in arcane power when it comes to casting spells. Which brings us to a discussion on spellcasters in the Barbarians of Lemuria RPG. There are no comprehensive list of spells provided, though there are quite a few examples of the kinds of things that can be done using the system. Magic is accomplished through the expenditure of arcane power, and this is represented by points equal to 10 plus the character's rank in the magician career path. There are 4 classes of spells: cantrips, and then spells of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd magnitude. As might be expected, cantrips have very minor effects, things such as illusionary sounds, a negative modifier of -1 to the target's next roll, 1 point of lifeblood damage, and costs 1 or 2 arcane points. Spells of the 3rd magnitude are the most powerful kind of spell a magician can cast. They have a cost of at least 11 arcane power points, and usually take quite a bit of time to cast and research, or perhaps are dependent on certain astrological alignments, rituals requiring at least 3d6 assistance, and the magicians themselves might suffer wounds as a result of such a thing. Examples of spells of the third magnitude include such things as a spell that inflicts a plague on a whole city, or allows the sorcerer to open a rift in time and space. Thus, players who wish to engage in spell casting in the game are only limited by their imagination and creativity, and of course the core ability of their character. In general, due to the heavy research required to reach the pinnacles of the career, spellcasters are usually evil NPCs. It's also possible to play a priest or druid in the game. While all 20 gods of Lemuria are followed, those characters with a career rank of 1 or more must choose one god to whom they are devoted. Druids follow the dark gods. Priests and druids are not spellcasters, but frequently, in addition to their devotion to their god, they also are competent in the career of magician. People not in the know frequently believe that such priests are granted their powers from the gods, and the priests are, of course, reluctant to correct them. However, by spending time in the temple performing ceremonies and rituals connected to the worship of their god, they can gain fate points. Characters gain 1 fate point per hour spent in such activities, to a maximum of their current career rank. Fate points grant either a boon or flaw to the priests themselves, or anyone within their line of sight. There's no roll needed to accomplish this, it automatically affects the target. Hero points in the game allow a character to modify a scene in a beneficial way. For example, if locked in a cell, a loose stone in the wall that can be used to bash the head of a guard could be found. More commonly, hero points are used in combat to improve the success of an attack, or to reduce the damage taken from a wound, or even defy death itself. Where normally a character would be in the death range from some damage, a hero point moves the character to unconscious instead. As has been previously explained, tasks in the game are a simple resolution of rolling 2 dice, applying the appropriate modifiers, and if the roll is 9 or more, the task succeeds. Boons and flaws allow the rolling of 3 dice, whereby a boon removes the lowest dice, and a flaw removes the highest, and you take the result of 2 dice. With that in mind, let's move to combat resolution in the game. In order to do that properly, we have to discuss the concept of rabble, toughs, and villains, which are the rankings of NPCs in the game. Rabble are simply the everyday people you encounter in the world, everything from the shopkeep at the local store to the common soldier, and more commonly the flunkies of the villain. If they do have weapons and armor, they are of the most mediocre of quality. They have 0 points in ability scores and about 1 to 3 points of lifeblood. Essentially, a single hit from a hero will kill them. Toughs are a step up. They are the sergeants of the city, watch, mercenaries, other adventurers, the lieutenants of the main villain. Not as bad as rabble, but not as good as the heroes. They might have a few points in abilities and careers, and have about 6 lifeblood points. Finally, there are villains. They are on par or exceed the abilities of the heroes. Instead of having hero points, they have villain points. They are the arch enemy of the heroes. They have a large number of rabble at their disposal and toughs as henchmen. The rulebook does a pretty efficient job of listing generic examples of the kinds of toughs that are likely to be encountered, but rabble and villains are left to be created by the GM, but also there is a decent listing of monsters, which I'll get to in just a moment. Combat is broken down into rounds of a few seconds in length. The order of action is given a priority based on the priority roll, and then actions are resolved. To determine priority, roll 2d6, add the character's mind plus their initiative roll. A 9 or better indicates success. Note, you can improve the level of your success by spending a hero point. A hero point turns a regular success into a mighty success. A roll of 12 is automatically a mighty success, and a hero point turns it into a legendary success. In addition to being able to act before anyone else, a mighty success means only heroes and villains act. Rabble and toughs are dumbfounded the first round. A legendary success is the same, except that you also get to add a +1 to your attack roll for the entire encounter. This chart makes everything pretty clear. NPCs don't roll, they act based on what the heroes roll, and you only roll for priority once at the beginning of each encounter. If there is an enemy with an initiative score, then that is used as a negative modifier to the player's priority roll. Once priority is determined, actions are resolved in priority order as shown on the chart. Movement is abstract. This game is meant to be played as a theater of the mind experience. An agility roll can be used if a player really wants to move to a particular place, and it's up to the game master to describe the scene and set up the encounters. That said, I really like to use miniatures for combat. In my opinion, nothing gives everyone at the table the same view of the scene and what all the tactical options are than having a battle mat and some minis to show where everyone and everything is in relation to everything else. Fortunately, the game does allow for this, assigning a move of 25 feet per round +1 per point of agility. A running character moves at twice the speed and a sprinting character at 4 times the speed. Combat is then resolved based on the type of attack, melee, ranged, or magical, and damage based on the type of weapon, as discussed earlier. In addition to the standard 1-to-1 combat rules, Barbarians of Lemuria also provides rules for mass combat battles and ship-to-ship naval battles, and it's fundamentally simple to resolve as the game uses low modifiers and simple systems to begin with. Using modifiers for field position, force size, and a variety of other modifiers, including those of player characters involved, each round results in one side or the other gaining victory points. The first side to gain 10 victory points wins the battle. Naval battles are a bit more detailed, with statistics for individual types of ships provided. The game system allows for individual ship-to-ship combat, mass sea combat, as well as the use of fantastic skyships. These are, of course, all theater of the mind types of affairs, and the rules are necessarily abstract. They are, however, effective at allowing the GM to tell a narrative story of this type and the player characters to have an active role in the outcome of such events. Now we get to the Gazetteer of Lemuria, and here's where a bit of confusion comes into play for me. The cover text seems to indicate that this game is a post-apocalyptic Earth fantasy game in the vein of, say, Thundar the Barbarian, while actual history text of the setting gives no allusions to such a thing and seems to stick pretty close to Lynn Carter's original history, that of a prehistory setting 100,000 years before the onset of modern history of humankind that we are familiar. That's not to say this isn't a post-apocalyptic setting, but it's a fantasy one, brought on by sorcerer kings of the past who set themselves up to be gods and dabbled in forces beyond their control. The game is set in a second age of man after the second fall of the sorcerer kings. Religion is composed of 20 gods of the types one would expect to find in a fantasy setting such as this. The deities presented are all original to the setting. Charkhan, the god of war. Gondil, the builder god. Hurum, father god, god of the sky. Iundel, the carouser god, for example. There are also dark gods worshipped by the black druids and the sorcerer kings. There is Hadron, lord of the void. Morgazon, the demon lord of madness. Nemereth of the long sleep, the death god. And Tharungazoth, the slaughterer, the pain lord, and so on. The setting most definitely boasts a colorful set of deities. Further, while human-centric, it is possible to play other races as well. Races in the game, unlike others of this type, specifically don't provide any true in-game statistical boost. Instead, a list of potential boons and flaws are listed, as well as a short list of male and female names, though some have restrictions on the types of careers they can follow. For example, blue giants can't be magicians or alchemists. The gazetteer of the setting is surprisingly detailed, but of course most areas are just given a brief overview of what is there, the culture of the place, the climate, and such. The rest is left to the game master to flesh out. The PDF map of the setting I received looks great and is easily printed out for reference. About 20 pages are dedicated describing and fleshing out the setting information. Beasts of Lemuria are more primordial than those of the modern-day Earth and are all pretty original to the setting. The kinds of attacks they have and the damage they do is based on their size, and they are categorized as either rabble, toughs, or villains, as you can see from this chart here. The variety of creatures and the original types are not of the typical things you would see in most fantasy RPGs. There aren't any orcs, but there are the Groth, which are primitive man-eating beastmen. Artwork accompanies just about any creature, and it's a good thing too, as these are all original creatures and will need some detailed description from the game master to really bring them to life. Even things that are familiar to players of fantasy RPGs are handled a bit different in Barbarians of Lemuria. For example, the undead are called the Bloodless, so while you will encounter skeletons and zombies here, you can also encounter the Necropede, a guardian of crypts, and the Skittering Hand, a guardian of magicians' lairs. Demons are also handled uniquely, while there are examples given of the types of things that might be encountered, such as the Zoltheg or the Volmazenlu. The GM is encouraged to use the list of demon powers and abilities to create their malevolent beings of the Dark Lord. The adventures in the game are called sagas, and this game provides not just one, but a total of 4 sample adventures. Congar the Gladiator, Congar and the Island of Doom, Congar and the Plains of Death, and Congar and the Thieves of Malakut. In my opinion, it is imperative that a game provide a sample adventure with the rules, and my expectations are really exceeded here. Full color maps and NPC write-ups means that a game master will be able to jump right into the thick of things almost immediately with only a minimum amount of prep work. In the past, I've lamented the lack of a glossary of terms in most modern RPGs, but once again, Barbarians of Lemuria steps up to the plate and delivers with a relatively detailed lexicon of terms for the settings section and a short glossary of key terms for the rules of the game as well. Well done. And finally, at the end of everything, there is a very detailed and useful index, which, as anyone who's been watching this channel for any length of time knows, I'm a bit of a stickler for. So let's go ahead and take a look at Barbarians of Lemuria on my D20 scale of style, presentation, and value. Style-wise, this book is phenomenal. The watercolor artwork is abundant throughout the rules and does a great job of conveying the pulp feel and style of the setting. The artwork team of Peter Frayne, Jenna Fowler, John Blazizik, and Glenn Seal give the game a unique and distinctive look and convey the nature of the pulp setting flawlessly. I'm going to rate this a natural 20. The presentation throughout the rules is easy to follow, organization is succinct, and everything is written clearly, and examples are provided when needed. The rules system is a light one. This is a storytelling game. If you prefer detail mechanics, this game might not be for you, but if you are the type that prefers story over rules and enjoy pulp fantasy stories like Conan the Barbarian, Favid and the Grey Mouser, the tales of Edgar Rice Burroughs, Carl Edward Wagner, Michael Moorcock, and Elric of Melibone, you might want to check this game out. The complete set of rules is just 200 pages and an easy-to-follow format, and that's a big plus. Now, of course, some may not care for the fact that the setting is also a part of the system, but as I pointed out with my review of the Hyperborea game, there are a lot of benefits to the integration of rules and setting if it's well done, and it's the exception in this case. Then, of course, how can I not praise the fact that there are 2 glossaries, one for game mechanics and one for the setting, and a comprehensive index. This game is really pressing all my game requirement buttons. So keeping that aspect of the game in mind, I'm also going to have to rate this a natural 20 for presentation. Finally, let's talk value. This is most definitely a rule set for those who enjoy the ongoing campaign. Sure, you can tell one-off stories, but the campaign is where the rules shine. This is available for print on demand, and right now you can pick up the PDF and the soft-covered standard print for just $15. A hardcover is just $20, extremely affordable, all-in-one rules fantasy RPGs with 4 adventures, complete listing of the index and everything that I've mentioned so far. I really have no choice but to give this a natural 20 as well. So there it is, a full-on 20 across the board. Critical hit from Beyond Belief Games. Great job to Simon Washburn, his team, who really put a lot of work, effort, and love into this game. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this review fun, useful, and interesting. I'd like to take the time to thank all my patrons who make this channel what it is and these videos possible. Thank you so much. As you know, I was sick and sort of missed my favorite time of year, Halloween, but I'm still going to do the review on Mansions of Madness Value 1. Fall is the season of horror after all. Please note my DJ schedule has also found an opening, so I've got an extra free day during the week to work on video, so that means more content coming your way. And I do plan on dipping my toe a little bit into the YouTube Shorts. I have some fun ideas, primarily promoting the OSR of the channel, and to talk about things that normally don't require a full video. So look for those in the coming weeks as well. Please give this video a like, comment, and share. Please check out my Teespring store for great gaming swag, t-shirts, carry bags, coffee cups, and more. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Retro Reviews, and consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron yourself. Or alternatively, you can just send a tip through the PayPal tip jar. A link is in the description. And as always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.